Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug has a very interesting show. A lot of places we've been over the years, dealing with petroglyphs and ruins and things like that. Archaeology, basically.
Well, this was triggered by one of your colleagues. Her name is Stacy, and she gave a talk at the museum to the docents who I've been volunteering there for about a year and a half now, and so it's been a lot of fun. But she was bringing up a lot of interesting things about why they are going to the effort of digitizing all the petroglyphs at the Sanilac Petroglyphs.
Oh yeah, Sanilac, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, MDOT has got a device where they can go in and actually digitally take a look at iterations of what is going on, and so they can tell how fast that they're deteriorating. So they're
on sandstone.
Sandstone. Yeah. Sandstone is quite friable, which means it's you can just take your stick and make a mark in it.
And guess what? They have done that at Sanilac Petroglyphs. Right. People have defaced them. I mean, they've gone over the years. You can see differences that people have done. I mean, they try to protect it, but it's not really enclosed or you can get in there and people could get in there and do damage. It's not too bad, but even without conscious vandalism, nature does a terrible.
Yeah, you have a lot of litter, leaves, and lichen, and algae is.
They love the petroglyphs. Yep.
And so, what they're trying to do is actually figure out how fast that they deteriorate, or get the patina on them, where they start to fade. And she was also saying that there's sort of like two different schools of thought within the tribes themselves. Some of them actually go in there and continue to etch them so that they remain, and the other ones want to just leave them the way they are and let them.
The tribes are not monolithic. Trust me, they're not. They may be monolithic or in agreement when it comes to other people, but among themselves, they have a lot of different stories, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different approaches to the same basic problems. Right. Yep, and they are.
Rich is he works for the Michigan History Center as an artist, and so you worked with Native Americans, or what they want to be called the First Peoples, or the Anishinaabe. And we've been getting some instruction as docents of what we want to have the exhibits now say, rather than
again, Doug, let me tell you, amongst the tribes, someone couldn't care less if you call them Indians, and some are very, very proactive that you want to call it what they know themselves. I mean, out west it's the same way. I mean, a lot of people they know themselves as the people, as opposed to I don't know, Cheyenne or Rap. I'm not sure there's the Plains people and all that kind of different things. But yeah, and you want to be as courteous and respectful as possible. No reason not to call them what they want to be called. But again, it's not always fully in agreement. It's not monolithic. See, we in the West, and that's we think you come up with an approach, and it's going to be uniform. Well, we're not uniform either, are we, Doug? People disagree on everything. Well, Native peoples are no different than any other people in that respect. They're special. They're wonderful. I mean, when I did a big mural for the museum, Doug, wow, there was quite a few number of tribes involved in it, and yeah, it took quite a while to get agreements on things, and I had I talked to one gentleman that was up in their own museum up north in Mount Pleasant, and I said, and it had like a creation story, and I went, so this is the creation story for this is what the way the tribes here. He says, well, this is this creation story that all of us could agree on. Basically, there's a whole lot of differences, and
that's a Zebuing center up there, right?
Yeah, Zebuing, yeah. And so I guess I thought, well, I guess it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. You know, native peoples are not any more monolithic than a German or Belgian or, you know, or Englishman or Frenchman. We all have different approaches to things, you know. It's, I mean, so it's kind of interesting. So anyway, back to our subject at hand, Doug. So how did you want to approach this as far as you got going back to state?
We already got a good, but one of the things that we were told as docents at the museum were that we needed to stay away from the idea that the Native Americans they migrated from across the Bering Strait. Because
I don't have any problem with that.
I don't either. I think
but a lot of people, the archaeologists, they
that's
are
what they
really
insist
into
on that.
Yeah, they're fixed on it. See, I don't have a problem that tribes did come from the Bering Strait. I think some of the Mayan and some of those people there, that's very obvious that when you ask even some of the people down there, when I was in Chichen Itza, you've been there, right, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I talked to some of the Mayan down there that they fully believe that they were descended from the Mongolian people, and they look a lot like. There's a lot of very lot of similarities in body type and that kind of stuff. I don't have a problem that many tribes may have come over from the Siberian, you know, into all across the Bering Strait.
But the Ottawa say, well, we came from Eastern Canada, and so that's what we've been told that the seven fires. Which, if you look at the Sanilac petroglyphs, there's actually it looks like a candle stand that has seven fires in it. And I interpreted that as being a menorah, and I saw that as being an indication that maybe there was a memory of the lost tribes of Israel, you know.
A menorah, yeah. Well, the thing about it is, you know, you and I we've gone up north over the years. It's very controversial, but it's a very prevalent viewpoint, but not accepted in academia. First, it's called the diffusion theory, where people come across the Atlantic Ocean and other places. And we talked to some people years ago, and there's some other things I've read. I haven't really researched it in years, Doug, so I can't say whether this is true or not. But there apparently was Michigan signature copper in Phoenician artifacts. Now,
that's Fred Redome's idea, and he has a place up in Marquette, and we interviewed him up there.
Right, and that astounded me. If that is true, that is truth, which I say I don't have no way of verifying it one way or the other. But the fact is, if Phoenicia has Michigan signature copper, silver, copper, and gold. I'm not sure there may be other elements, but those three, wherever you mine it from, has its own signature. Apparently,
that's right.
It's all when you get gold out of or copper, whatever, out of Arizona, it's different than Michigan.
Right.
You know, and silver and out of Denver is different than you know, let's say Utah or whatever, you know, or wherever you mine it. So that would be significant, Doug. And the traditions and the histories of the native peoples themselves indicate that they come from other sides of the world, not all just the Bering Strait. But that got really locked in stone the last century or so. Was it Muir? I'm not sure. Who was the guy? There was a guy that was his theory anyway, and it kind of they went with it, you know. So
well, if you
that being the only theory.
We've also talked about how we know that people came from across to Easter Island, you know, from the
and Thor Heyerdahl, or was that his name?
Thor Heyerdahl had the theory that they came from South America and then populated the.
Okay. Oh, really? I thought he was the one that said they came from the islands and came across, but I thought because he.
But they demonstrated that the boats that came to Hawaii and to other the Polynesians came across on these boats. They constructed one like it called the Hokulea. And they sailed to Easter Island and all these other different places using the navigation techniques that the Polynesians had.
Okay.
And our friend Barry Makel talks about that. He has a lot of people who still do that same thing today.
amazing.
Little boats, and they
I
were
wouldn't do
visiting them.
No way I would do that. I've been in boats in some storms, some big boats, and these little things they're going across. It's amazing. I still remember one time, Doug, I was up in Isle Royale, and I went around Isle Royale, the main part in Lake Superior, and I could barely get back. I had a motorized little motorboat, and it was hard pressed to get back.
Yeah.
I mean, because I went around the outside of the island, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
Should have stayed in the inlets, but I went around to get to the other backside. And that was fine. Going there was easy. Then, but coming back, wow, I was a little nervous. We did make it, but it was pretty scary. Because you're in Lake Superior and it's cold, and you'll go across an whole ocean, Doug. Wow, you know.
Well, they apparently managed how to do that, and so, but we've been to a lot of different places that have Indian ruins, Indian rock art, and petroglyphs,
Yes.
and a lot of them depict some things that don't fit quite fit the mold that the traditional archaeologists would like them to fit, and so
Or paleontologists.
paleontologists.
Either one. Yep.
And so if we look at our Natural Bridges National Monument,
Yes, that's our favorite. One of our favorite ones.
we
We've been
have
there a couple
the
times.
dinosaur petroglyphs that
Yeah.
we have seen twice, or actually 3 times, I think. We've been
Been
there.
down there, yeah. Is it 3 times? I can't. I know it was at least twice, but it might have been. But you're right. We've hiked down.
Yeah.
You got to hike. It's the middle bridge in Bridges
Right.
National Monument, and
Yeah, we were there in 1999 and in 2001 again. The second time is when we found the petroglyphs. The first time we
Oh.
went through there and we didn't know about them.
that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, and that was interesting.
Then
Is
I
Liz,
came back with Liz was the one who found them.
we're like on this one wall. There's all kinds of petroglyphs and pictographs, and we've talked about that before. The difference between a petroglyph and a pictograph, and they mix them up. Petroglyph is incised into the rock, and a pictograph they actually use pigment, different natural pigments to make pictures on the rock. Anyway, we're looking at this one side, and it's on the other side.
Right, yeah.
About what, 10 feet up or so? And not
Yeah.
only that, is everyone shows the one. It's an apatosaurus.
Yeah.
It's got 4 legs, a long tail, a long neck, the head, but there's 2 of them. There's a
and-
second one which no one ever
Right.
talks about. That one, it's a little bit, kind of behind it and a little bit up to the right side of them. But they're very clear. But
Yeah.
you talked about patinas destroying the sand lake. Even out in Arizona, Doug,
Right.
there's patina on the rock. It's really dry. Why not Arizona, Utah? It's very dry in that area. At least now it is. And there's still patina developed on. That's how you know these petroglyphs are old, or at least not.
Right.
They weren't carved in recent.
What was
memories.
remarkable about that was when we went back in 2016 with John Iverson. Larry and John Iverson went there with me, but Larry didn't manage to go down with us for some reason.
Yeah.
But in any event, when we got down there, I was looking for the petroglyphs, and I knew exactly where they were, but instead of being straight across from us, they were up there.
Well, they were up there before. I remember they were always up high. They were 10 feet up, kind of a little ledge.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the canyon had actually been carved about 15 feet deeper.
Oh, so it's even higher than it was before.
Yeah, it
'cause-
was even higher. Yeah.
Wow. How do you even? Wow. How are you even going to see them now?
Well, you sort of have to look at them at an angle, and that's one of the pictures I took of them the second time. And they have faded quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so what this tells me is that they aren't really all that old, but they are older than Columbus and older than...
Yeah, they're several hundred years old. They're let's put it this way. They look like they're pictures of creatures that were seen.
Right, yeah.
They were living creatures. It's not like they're millennia old, but they may be, they're at least 400 or 500 years old. To have a
Right, yeah.
patina develop the way they did. Man, they must have had a lot more water in the last few years, Doug. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, the nature of canyons is that you get flash floods that go into
Yeah, that's
them.
true, yeah.
And you can see where the landscape in the canyon had been sort of altered and washed around, and there wasn't a river. There was just ponds.
Yeah, because we went down there, it's pretty dry. We saw kind of where there might have been washes and stuff, but really there was not much water down there. We were there, but you could see how it could be there. Doug, so that's a petroglyph. We've seen how the one up in, we like the one up in our own territory. It's kind of go up in Michigan, and the one with the seat, they call it the water panther or whatever.
The me-she-pe-shiw. The me-she-pe-shiw is found in the Lake Superior Provincial Park in Ontario.
Yeah.
And you go about 50 miles north of Sault Ste. Marie, and it's in that park, and it's called the Agawa petroglyph or something like that.
Yeah.
And we went to see that. I think it was in 2008 or something like that.
Yeah.
Our friend Jody Shackravity was
right when he was here.
And
it's kind of tricky because you got to kind of hike across some rocks, and you got to do a little. But it's you can go.
Yeah, it's up on the cliff face.
Yep.
And it's and the rock that goes into Lake Superior, there's about 10 feet of rock, but it goes at about a 30-degree angle down into the water. And
right.
I remember you almost took a tumble down the rock, and
I conveniently forgot that. I don't remember that.
but this depicts a creature of some sort, but it looks a lot like a stegosaurus with jagged edges on the tail that goes on out.
Yep.
And we find that there are some legends that go along with that, which the Native Americans talk about.
Yeah, and they do, and they're pretty open. A lot of them, if you really get them to talk, and they will kind of. I don't know if they will totally discount it, but a lot of them are not that enamored of these creatures being dead for millions of years, because their stories indicate they've seen dragons, water dragons, land dragons, for in their own ancestors' lifetime. In other words, they have historical memories of these creatures within the last few hundred years, and so.
Well, that's what we were told when we were at Tuba City, where we talked about the human and dinosaur tracks next to each other. And that's what they told us, is that yes, our ancestors walked with these creatures, and that they. And we had a special privilege in 2011, because we had maybe 10 or 15 of us that
was a pretty good group there that year.
Group. Yeah. And each of us was handing out the guy at the booth a $20 bill, and so he sort of ended up liking us quite a bit. And so
that's tough.
He says, "You see this road down here? You follow us," and so he took us out to a secret spot where they had the petroglyphs.
Yep.
And those were pretty amazing too. And I didn't see anything of significance like we did at the natural bridges. But
there's supposedly out in Tuba City, there's supposed to be one really amazing one, but I think it's on somebody's property or something. You got to get. You may know where exactly where it is, but it's not easy to get access to that one. It's a pretty spectacular one.
But you remember it sort of went up a hill to get to where the tracks were. To get on the US 160, and you go over the hill and you see the sign for the tracks, and each time I go that way, it seems like I miss the turn. And I have to go down the road a little bit and turn around and go back. But when I was first published on the website a little bit about these tracks, I had somebody who was a a teacher at the Tuba City High School contact me, and he said, well, that the tracks not only were up there, but were down at the bottom of the hill as well. Now, what that indicates to me is that the layers of rock, which these tracks were in, had to pre-exist, those tracks being there. So that it wasn't that things were eroded off the top.
Yeah.
It was part of this particular area, and so what was up at this level wasn't part of a burial sequence that would have been.
Oh, I see what you're getting at.
So
okay.
like that top layer would have been the same age as that bottom layer.
Right, happened at the same time.
And so, this is part of the interpretation problem that we have in interpreting these different things. Tracks and fossils and where they lie,
It's probably why we like petroglyphs so much, because there are these strange anomalies that occur quite frequently, and then in the same areas, a lot of these native places, like out in Arizona and here in Michigan and other places, you'll find like tracks and things like that involved in some of the same locations. But the idea of human drawings of these things, think about cave art, and they're showing they're drawing dinosaur creatures. Not just not just mastodons or mammoths. They're drawing dinosaur-like creatures, and it's just a matter where you live.
Well, it isn't that only with what we might consider more primitive native type of people, but the civilizations in Europe all had dragons.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And I went to this palace in Würzburg, which was built in the 1400s, which is quite some time ago. And this fresco on the top of the ceiling, had all these dragons on it.
Yep.
And you have depictions of St. George and the Dragon found in many of these different places.
And of course, creation groups have talked about this for years, but many of these dragon pictures, when you look at some of the originals, are very similar to reconstructions of modern dinosaurs. Right. They really are. And they, like St. George the Dragon, there's one picture of it, and it looks like, I think, a Rutuodon or Rubiodon or something like that. Again, it's kind of a squatty looking, every time I see St. George the Dragon, it's always some squatty looking little dragon. Right. But what's interesting is you see these, a lot of them in the New World, like I say, the Western, the Mayan, the Inca, we see a lot of stuff. Well, look at in Peru. It's controversial, but those Ica stones and stuff like that, and some of those are just really obvious dinosaurs. Some of them, what really gets me, it's kind of like the Pluxee tracks, which now even creationists distance themselves from, and the Ica stones. And I wish they wouldn't do that. I'm not saying that everything is on the up and up. I'm not saying there aren't people that carve things on their own. Like we know that some people carve tracks in that Pluxee bed, and maybe some people have used modern tools to carve some of the stones. But some of them are, to me, not arguably old. And they're ancient, and they still show dinosaurs, and some of them are very modern. Looking like modern reconstructions of stegosaurs, T-Rexes, Apatosauruses, Triceratopses, things like that. So,
Well, what was interesting is this past weekend, my wife was cleaning out one of our drawers, and she found a whole bunch of coins, and they were from her trip to Russia. There was
a kopeck or what?
Yeah, it was a kopeck, and on the back of the kopeck, the different denominations is St. George and the Dragon.
Yeah, that's a big story.
And there's also the story of St. Margaret and the Dragon, which I saw in the church on my family's ancestral property.
We saw that. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah, that was when we went to
And she was the one who had her foot on the head of the dragon because she had overcome the dragon and had in the stained glass window. There she was.
And of course, that's the thing we want to let people understand, that there's, in a creationist worldview, dragons albeit with, there are embellishments, there are exaggerations, there are mythologization. That's a bad word. I can't even say that word. Mythological connotations they put on the creatures. But when you get back to some of the original drawings and original descriptions of these things, they sound very much like modern reconstructions of dinosaurs. So the case is, did dinosaurs really die out millions of years ago?
Right.
From a creation viewpoint, we'd say no. But from an evidential standpoint, it seems like not either. And that's what these petroglyphs and these Ica stones, these European depictions of dragons and stuff, they're very. It shows you that these creatures really are not that they're not millions of years old.
Well, here's the soundbite I want you to remember: is that the dragons of mythology are actually the dinosaurs of science.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe.
For the most part, yeah.
And it makes sense because now we find soft tissue dinosaurs in dinosaur bones.
Sure, yeah.
Entire mummified dinosaur found in
blood cells. You can say the collagen we found. Yeah,
and so they can't be 65 million years old.
And that's the most recent one, based on standard evolutionary time frame, deep time. 60. Well, I've heard as recent as 63 million with Triceratops. Sorry, it's still 63 million. Yeah, there's a million years is 1,000 years. 1 million. DNA, soft tissue, hemoglobin, none of that's going to survive.
Yeah, they've measured how fast that deteriorates. And,
how fast is it? You know?
Not off the top of my head, but it's in the thousands of years, not millions.
It'd be gone. It'd be gone.
So it's something that we've been having a lot of fun going around the different.
See these things up close and personal. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, like. David Vonderheide took us out to a place called the V Ranch in Arizona, and there was a wall of petroglyphs and all these different depictions of life years ago, and you have to wonder what they were seeing.
Wasn't there a dragon in that? Wasn't there a dinosaur?
I think
there was a fire-breathing dragon or something.
The fire-breathing dragon is what David Vonderheide and Guy Forsyth found at Wapatki National Monument.
Oh, that's what it was, right? Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so that's controversial, but it's kind of cool. So we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.